My husband told another woman he adored her, and he did it while I was lying next to him, pretending to sleep. I'm Lauren. 32, graphic designer, lover of all things autumn and cozy. We lived in a town called Maple Ridge, a quiet New England suburb where front lawns are trimmed like runways and everyone waves whether they mean it or not. My life was good. Not flashy, not loud. Just good. Or so I thought. Eli, my husband, was never a complicated guy. He liked simple things: college football, steak on the grill, and falling asleep with the remote on his chest. For 6 years, he was the same steady rhythm in my life. Then one day, he just changed tempo. It started with a gym membership. Now, I've got nothing against getting fit. But this wasn't a new year, new me phase. This was a full-on personality transplant. Eli, who used to grumble about walking to the mailbox, suddenly woke up at 5:30 a.m. to beat the morning crowd. He was meal prepping grilled chicken, counting macros, and buying overpriced supplements from a boutique fitness shop in Ashford Hills. Then there was the cologne, sharp, citrusy, something a 25-year-old spin instructor might wear. Not my Eli. Not the man who used to think Febreze counted as grooming. At first, I told myself it was fine. Maybe it was a late-stage self-improvement kick. Maybe I was overthinking it. But every time I asked about it, he'd give me this quick smile, too quick, and say, "Just trying to stay healthy, babe." That word babe had started to feel more like a period than a pet name. His eyes wouldn't meet mine. And then, the bank statements started whispering truths he wouldn't. $320 at a luxury fitness boutique. $610 on personal training packages. His phone, always face down. He stopped eating dinner with me. He stopped noticing when I wore lipstick. And then came the late nights. He claimed the gym, but our gym was 10 minutes away. Sometimes, he'd be gone for 3 hours. Once he came home and said, "Traffic was bad." At 9:30 p.m. on a Wednesday. So I followed him. I parked across the street from his gym, heart punching holes through my ribs. I had no plan. Just a terrible need to know. And then she showed up. Tall, blonde braid, perfect posture, like she stepped out of a fitness ad. Tessa, his trainer. I remembered her from the gym's charity auction last December. She had been magnetic, even then. They didn't see me. They didn't even look around. They just walked toward her car, shared a look, and then Eli kissed her. Not a nervous peck. Not a mistake. A long, slow, familiar kiss. Like he'd done it 100 times before. Something inside me caved in. It wasn't a scream. It wasn't a sob. Just a sharp, collapsing silence. I drove home without remembering the drive. That night, while he was in the shower, I picked up his phone. It unlocked with the same code he used for our garage door. The first message at the top? "I've been craving you all day. Can we skip dinner and go straight to dessert after our session?" I dropped the phone on the nightstand like it had burned me. But not before seeing her name in his contacts, Tessa Biceps Flex Biceps. I didn't confront him. I didn't wake him or throw things or scream. Instead, I opened my laptop, typed out a fake inquiry email to Coach Tessa, asking about personal training services, and hit send. Let him cheat. Let me prepare. Because if Tessa was going to wreck my home, I figured the least she could do was help me tone my arms first. Walking into that gym the next week was like stepping onto a stage I'd been secretly rehearsing for. I wore leggings I hadn't touched in years and tied my hair in a tight ponytail like I knew what I was doing. My fake fitness consult with Tessa was booked for 10 a.m. I arrived 15 minutes early, not because I was nervous, but because I needed to see it. The place. The setting. Where my husband's loyalty went to die. The gym buzzed with the usual crowd, hard music, clanging weights, the smell of pre-workout and sweat. And then I saw her. Tessa, in high-waisted compression shorts and a cherry-red tank top, practically glowing. She was laughing with a client. A guy twice her age, red-faced and clearly smitten. And weirdly, She didn't look like a villain. I'd expected the typical, other woman vibe, something cold, sharp, snake-like. But she was warm, engaged. She hugged her client after the session. Her laugh wasn't fake. And it threw me off enough that when she turned and saw me, I almost forgot to play my role. "Lauren?" She beamed, extending a hand. "Tessa. So great to meet you. Ready to get strong?" I smiled back. So ready. That first session? Torture. Not just physically. I mean, I hadn't done a proper squat since 2019, but emotionally. Every time she corrected my form or complimented my effort, I had to resist the urge to scream, "You slept with my husband, you smiling, chipper monster." But I didn't. Instead, I smiled. I stretched. I asked questions. I listened as she told me about her career, her dreams of opening her own studio. "I want it to be more than a gym," she said one morning while we were on the rowing machine. "Like a space where people rebuild themselves after hard stuff. Divorce, breakups, grief, you name it." I nodded, jaw tight. "You don't even know the kind of grief you're standing in front of." After 2 weeks, we started getting smoothies after workouts. She liked mango pineapple with turmeric. I told her mine was the same, even though it wasn't. We started texting. I sent her memes about leg day. She sent me a playlist called Level Up Energy. The irony was painful. She had no idea that every time I laughed at her jokes, I was also filing mental receipts. I was turning her into my confidant, and it was working. Eli never asked about my new trainer. He barely registered the change. But I watched him watch me out of the corner of his eye whenever I got dressed for the gym. My old hoodie was swapped for sleek activewear. I started drinking greens powder. My arms got leaner. My posture shifted. And somewhere in that process, I stopped waiting for his attention. He was the one staring now. He didn't know the reason I was glowing was because the woman he was cheating with had accidentally rebuilt the version of me he thought he could throw away. Then something happened I didn't expect. Tessa invited me to her apartment. Just a girls' night, wine, takeout, Netflix. We sat on her balcony wrapped in blankets, laughing about the disaster of her last boyfriend. Not Eli. A different one. She opened up about her family, her trust issues, how she used to fall for emotionally unavailable men because she thought that was the best she could get. I sipped my wine and nodded, my stomach turning. Because she didn't know I had read her text to Eli. She didn't know that the man who sent her heart emojis at midnight also spooned me in our marriage bed an hour later. Or maybe she did know, and that's what kept me up later than anything else. The next morning, I stared at my reflection and saw something unfamiliar. Not the heartbreak. Not the betrayal. Power. I wasn't the same woman who clutched her chest and cried in her driveway 3 months ago. I was something sharper now. Smarter. And with Tessa in my corner, unknowingly feeding me the details of their crumbling affair, I knew exactly how this would end. Not with a fight. With a performance. The more time I spent with Tessa, the more surreal everything became. We weren't just gym buddies anymore. We were becoming friends. Real friends. We had in-jokes, matching water bottles, even a weekly sushi date. And the whole time, she had no idea I was married to the man who used to whisper, "I miss you," into her voicemail. At first, it was revenge. But now, I couldn't tell if I was infiltrating her world or if I'd accidentally become part of it. And that scared me more than anything. Eli remained oblivious. He noticed the changes, sure. I saw it in how his eyes lingered a second longer, how he'd reach for my waist as I walked past in leggings that hugged the new shape I was carving. He tried to flirt one night. I smiled and said I was late for a dinner with someone special. He laughed nervously and said, "Nice to see you out again." I saw the twitch behind his eyes. He didn't know it, but he was slowly being removed from the narrative. And I was writing a new one. 2 months in, things shifted. Tessa showed up to one of our workouts looking drained. I asked if she was okay. She hesitated, then admitted something that made my stomach drop. I think I'm being ghosted, she said, wiping sweat from her brow. By who? Some guy I've been seeing. I shouldn't even be talking about it. She wouldn't say his name. But I knew. Eli was pulling away. I didn't expect that. My plan had always assumed I'd be the one to end things. But apparently, my transformation had knocked something loose in him. Maybe he sensed I was becoming untouchable again. Maybe he just wanted control back. Whatever it was, his messages to her became sporadic. His gym visits shorter. His lies sloppier. And it was working. Tessa started unraveling in small, careful ways. She asked questions during our sessions. You've never met my boyfriend, right? Do you believe in karma? Do you think people can change? One day over coffee, she admitted she had fallen for someone she shouldn't have. He's married, she whispered, her voice barely audible. He told me they were basically done. That she was cold and distant. That it was complicated. I didn't speak. My hands stayed wrapped around my cup like they were welded to it. The moment was here. But it wasn't time yet. So I just said, that sounds painful. I'm sorry. Inside, my heart was a furnace. Because now I knew one thing for sure. Tessa had known. Maybe not everything. Maybe she hadn't seen the wedding photos or scrolled my Instagram far enough. But she knew enough. And still chose to love him anyway. That night, Eli came home with flowers. Cheap ones. Grocery store leftovers. The kind wrapped in crinkled plastic with sad little water tubes at the stems. He handed them to me like they were penance. For being amazing, he said with that sheepish grin that used to melt me. But I didn't melt anymore. I placed them in a vase. Smiled. Kissed his cheek. Then went into the bedroom and texted Tessa. I think we should have dinner this week. Just you and me. Somewhere special. She replied almost instantly. OMG, yes. You read my mind. Let's celebrate our glow-up grinny face with smiling eyes. She had no idea what I was planning. Neither did Eli. But I knew exactly what was coming next. I was going to bring them both to the same table, without either of them realizing what I'd done. And by the time dessert was served, the masks would be off. The night of the dinner felt almost theatrical. The city lights were soft and golden, like a stage being set. The restaurant I chose was in Holbrook Square, just upscale enough to impress, just quiet enough to hear a glass drop. I wore a satin navy blue wrap dress, the kind Eli used to compliment when we were happy. My hair was pinned up in a way that said, composed, elegant, dangerous. I arrived early. I wanted the room to settle around me before the storm began. Tessa showed up 10 minutes later, glowing like a human exclamation point. Oh my God, Lauren, you look stunning, she said, wrapping me in a hug that smelled like vanilla and betrayal. You too, I replied, meaning it. It still confused me, how a person could cause you so much pain and still feel so familiar. We ordered cocktails. Talked about new gym routines, favorite skincare. It was light, breezy, almost real. I let her settle into comfort. I needed her to. She raised her glass. To strength. And new beginnings. I clinked mine gently. To truth. And then, right on cue, the door opened. Eli. Wearing the same blazer he wore the night he proposed. I watched the moment his eyes landed on us, on me sitting next to her, and I swear I saw the ground fall out from under him. He stopped mid-step. Blinked. His mouth twitched like it was trying to form a lie before he even knew what the question was. Eli? I said, perfectly neutral. What a surprise. Tessa froze. Her glass hovered midair. Her smile shattered like thin glass. You know each other? She asked, eyes ping-ponging between us. Oh, I said, leaning back in my chair like this was just another Friday night. We've known each other for years. Right, babe? Eli didn't sit. He looked like he wanted to teleport out of his own skin. What is this? I think that's your question to answer, I said, my voice silk wrapped around steel. Tessa finally spoke. Quiet. Shaken. You're married? His silence answered before he did. I turned to her. Surprise. I'm the cold, distant wife. You know, the one who just didn't understand him. Tessa looked physically ill. I didn't know, she said quickly, desperately. He told me it was over. I nodded slowly. And yet you never asked to meet me. Never questioned why his separated status came with zero evidence. Eli finally stepped forward. Lauren, please. I raised a hand. Don't. Then I stood. The entire restaurant wasn't watching, but they were aware. That quiet hum of curiosity that follows a disruption just big enough to matter. I lifted my glass again. Let's make a toast. To all the strength gained in silence. And all the truth revealed in very public, inconvenient ways. Tessa whispered. You planned this. Of course I did. I turned to Eli, then reached into my purse and placed a sealed envelope on the table. Inside is a copy of our prenup. Clause 7. Infidelity. I'll be filing for divorce on Monday. His face drained of color. I turned back to Tessa. And your boss will be hearing from me too. There's a strict client-trainer conduct clause in your employment contract, isn't there? Her lips parted, but she said nothing. The silence between them was heavy, loaded, and delicious. Don't worry, I added with a smile. You two will have so much to talk about on your way out. I grabbed my clutch, slid my chair in gently, and walked away. As I stepped out into the cool night air, I didn't look back. Inside, two people sat surrounded by candlelight and consequences, finally understanding the cost of lies spun too close to home. And I felt reborn. 3 weeks after the dinner, my divorce papers were filed. The prenup was airtight. No room for negotiation. Clause 7 had been clear since we signed it in a courthouse in Vermont 6 years ago. Infidelity, proven through written or digital communication, forfeits all claims to shared property. And I had texts, photos, timestamps. Thanks to Tessa, ironically, hand-delivered receipts. Eli tried to fight it at first. Sent me emails with, "Let's talk," in the subject line. Showed up at my apartment building, hovering in the parking lot like a dog who didn't understand why the door wouldn't open anymore. I ignored them all. Eventually, his lawyer called mine and we worked through the details. I kept the house, the car, and 80% of our joint savings. Roughly $240,000. That was the number I stared at when the transfer cleared. Not because I needed it, but because I wanted to remember it. That's how much my silence had been worth. Meanwhile, Tessa? Fired. Apparently, sleeping with a married client does technically breach every professional boundary imaginable. The gym owner, a woman named Rena, didn't need much convincing. Once I showed her the texts and proof, she was disgusted. Monsters hide behind positivity too, she muttered as she shredded Tessa's final check. But here's where it got complicated. Tessa reached out to me. Not angrily. Not defensively. Just real. She sent a long message, raw and without punctuation, saying how sorry she was, how manipulated she felt, how blind she'd been. She said, "I don't want forgiveness. I just didn't want to be another villain in your story." I didn't respond right away. I read it 5 times. Then I sent one line back. "You weren't the villain. You were the mirror." We never spoke again. As for Eli, he moved out of Maple Ridge. I heard he rented a condo near the highway, started going to therapy, maybe even joined a new gym. Alone this time. He texted me once more. Just one word. Why? I didn't answer. Because he already knew. But here's the part no one saw coming, not even me. About a month after the final papers were signed, I met someone. Not through some forced dating app or rebound nonsense. Just life doing its thing. His name was Julian. We met at a bookstore over the last copy of a David Sedaris essay collection. He smiled, said, "You take it, I've read it twice." And I said, "Third time's the charm." It started slow. No drama. No games. Just two people with bruises and the curiosity to compare them over coffee. And for the first time in what felt like years, I didn't feel like I had to hide my past to feel wanted. Julian didn't know the full story at first, but eventually I told him. Every piece of it. He listened. He didn't flinch. And when I was done, he said something that still echoes in my head. You didn't burn your life down, Lauren. You just lit the parts that were already rotting. So I leaned into this new life. No longer a wife playing detective. No longer a woman walking behind her own shadow. I was someone who had survived betrayal, spun it into power, and left the table not just stronger, but whole. And sometimes, when I look in the mirror now, I smile, not because of revenge, but because of the version of me I brought back from the wreckage. She's mine again.